When I went to work in Rotorua, I had visited Rotorua once before. I really wasn't accustomed to the smell at all. But however, I was still on my health department bursary, and in those days, Queen Elizabeth Hospital was run by the health department. It and the hospital at Hanmer Springs were the two hospitals run by the health department. QE, if you've never seen that hospital, is right down on the waterfront at Rotorua, and it was originally built as a rehab hospital for American servicemen post-war. So a lot of it was actually fibrillite and asbestos that was removed as we learnt these things. We actually had a new physiotherapy department built around us, made larger while I was on the staff there. And again, we were very strictly disciplined. At the time that I started there, we had an acting charge physio because the incumbent was on holidays, sabbatical leave, had returned to England. And it was a very hot summer, and we asked our acting charge if we could have regulation, if we could wear sandals instead of regulation white shoes, lace-up shoes. She agreed, and so we all got decked out because the government gave us a shoe and stocking allowance, and we got our white sandals per kind favour of the government. However, when Pat the Carter, as she is now, returned from leave, she was not impressed to see her staff of 12 or 15 physios in sandals, and they were forbidden immediately, and we were back in our white lace-up shoes and white stockings. Uniform always seemed to be a very strict thing in the hospitals where I worked, and it took me a while in later life to get used to the idea that you could actually treat a patient without being in uniform. But Rotorua was interesting. Patients in those days most of the patients that we saw come into the unit would come in for 6-week spells, and they came in on very high doses of prednisone. It was before the dangers of just as the dangers of prednisone were being discovered. Prednisone and butazolidine were the two drugs of choice up to that time. And so some patients would come in on maybe 50, 60 milligrams of prednisone, and they would come in for prednisone cuts, and they might have 10 milligrams taken off the first day, and that would bring them all into an acute flare of most of their joints, which would perhaps last for about 3 days. As soon as they subsided down again, the doctors would knock some more off the dosage. So we would have patients that were fit and healthy and reasonably mobile one day, and then they would be as miserable as could be and really in a lot of pain the next day with the next prednisone cut. But we still persevered, and every patient had individual physiotherapy as well. That was fine. The classes, there was a foot class, a knee class, a shoulder, and there was a set routine of exercises that you had to do. You were not allowed to think outside the square. And so we passed our day. The treatments, the individual treatments, were also boring too. We used an awful lot of Guthrie-Smith sling suspension. And you really had the choice of, did you use a 10 or 15 or a 20 pound spring? Because you had to strengthen all the muscle groups, so you worked in supine and then in side lying, and if they could get into prone, you did that too. They had their wax baths for their hands and their feet, and they also had their hydrotherapy, and I'd like to talk a little bit more about that. We had a wonderful swimming pool in the department where we did take the patients for exercise, but they also went over to the old government bathhouse in the gardens for massage or various balneology treatments. There were Aix massage, A-I-X, the French massage under running water, under the hot thermal water. There were mud baths. There was mud massage. And that old government bathhouse really is just the most wonderfully magic place. And it can still be visited to this day. And we would go over there sometimes when we had some free time or at the weekends and indulge ourselves in the luxuries that the patients were enjoying during the week. One of the strange things that you had to do in Rotorua, because of the high sulphur content in the air, was we did, of course, wear our badges on our uniforms, and in order to stop your badge blackening with the sulphur, you had to actually paint it with clear nail polish. And all our jewellery really had to be kept out of the city, out of the town as much as possible. It all became very affected. It cleaned up at the jewellers. But I can remember the first time going to visit a friend's home in Rotorua, and she had some trophies on the mantelpiece. And these silver trophies were all sitting in plastic bags to stop them becoming dirty from the sulphur fumes. So that was my experience in Rotorua, and I really don't know how it operates these days. It may have changed, or maybe they're still doing the same old exercises.